is one of the best countries in the world in which to invest. So I would like to thank all Canadians who work so hard, and it is also thanks to the leadership of this government.
It's time to move on to statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Perth, Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay my respects to a great Canadian who passed away last week. Brian Ronald MacDonald came to Stratford Festival in its early days, an inventive choreographer and director. Born in Montreal, Brian traveled the world over with legendary ballet and theatre companies. A founding member of the National Ballet of Canada, he worked tirelessly on scores of projects from coast to coast. His work as a director of opera and musicals resonates in Stratford today. A companion of the Order of Canada, Brian was recognized for his important contributions with numerous awards, including a Governor General's Performing Arts Award, for Lifetime Artistic Achievement, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. The arts are an important part of the Stratford and Canadian economy. We are fortunate to have had such a talented, dedicated artist in our country. Brian will be missed.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, December 10th marks the 25th anniversary of the conferment of the Nobel Peace Prize on the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I rise in recognizing this occasion and to express my solidarity with Tibetans in their demands for religious freedom and respect for basic human rights. Recently, I had the opportunity to lead a delegation of Canadian parliamentarians to meet His Holiness in Vancouver, where we confirmed Canada's support for the cause of the Tibetan people. His Holiness was made an honorary Canadian citizen in 2006. Last week, I met with Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the democratically elected leader of the exiled Central Tibetan administration. He too expressed dismay at the People's Republic of China for its disregard for Tibetans' legitimate request for freedom and the rule of law. On behalf of the proud Tibetan Canadian community in Etobicoke Lakeshore and across Canada, I urge the People's Republic of China to allow Tibetans to live their lives in freedom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Mr. Speaker, as the holidays approach, our thoughts turn to giving. And who needs to be given something more than this government, who deserves to be given the boot? We are reminded of a Dr. Seuss classic, but with a twist. It is the Grinch who stole Canada. And while we all wait for the Prime Minister's heart to grow 3 sizes, sadly, it seems to only shrink. Give us 5 years, he said, and you won't recognize Canada. How scary and true. He rolled back environmental standards and regulations, transforming our pristine wilderness into wastelands. He is making people who rely on public pension work two more years before retiring. He maintained a mean-hearted freeze on First Nations education budgets, so Aboriginal children are forced to do with less and less year after year. He made cuts to health care and hoarded money from every department, including Veterans Affairs. He is pushing injured members of our military out of the forces so they never become eligible for pensions. Food bank use is at an all-time high, and so is part-time, low-wage work. Well, Mr. Speaker, are his shoes just too tight? Is his sweater at fault? I tell you, it may be the stress of the job. But in the new year, it'll be the NDP who will get the job done.
The honourable member for Ottawa, Orleans.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks the 25th anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre in Montreal.
I have pleaded with the media to honour the 14 innocent victims rather than recall the name of the misogynist murderer. Aujourd'hui, je voudrais honorer...
Today, I would like to honour 12 posthumous engineers.
Michel Richard, Sonia Pelletier, Anne-Marie Lemay, Maryse Leclerc, Maud Yavernick, Anne-Marie Edward, Barbara Degnaud, Nathalie Croteau, Hélène Colgan, et Geneviève Bergeron. I also honour Budget Clerk Maryse Lagagnère and Nurse Barbara Klusnik-Widajewicz, and all those who were present at École Polytechnique on that day, also victims of this madness. We continue to remember them and tell their families that we share their sorrow.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago, Ukrainians took to the streets to stand up for their democratic rights and to secure a stronger future for Ukraine. With over 1.2 million people of Ukrainian heritage in Canada, our country as a whole stood and continues to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. What took place in Maidan inspired people around the world as people of Ukraine spoke louder than any government could have. A year since the Maidan began, Ukraine has come a long way. In May, President Poroshenko was elected, and in October, the parliamentary election took place. As a Canadian parliamentary observer in Kiev for both elections, I witnessed firsthand this spirit of hope. As we mark this one-year anniversary, we must continue to provide our support to Ukraine and to work with our allies in ending Russia's interference in Ukrainian affairs. Promoting Ukraine's sovereignty and strengthening our ties with the EU and Canada is a priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You have about 5 seconds. The honourable member for Calgary East.
Mr. Speaker, this week marks the 70th anniversary of the Convention on International Civil Aviation signed on 7th December 1944, which led to the creation of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, headquartered in Montreal since its inception in 1947. Canada is proud to be both the host state to this important United Nations specialized agency and a contributing member state to the Council of ICAO. I would like to ask all members of the House to join me in recognizing this milestone anniversary in Canadian and global civil aviation history and in underscoring Canada's continued strong dedication to the work and well-being of ICAO. This is demonstrated by our sustained commitment together with our partners in Montreal and Quebec. Canada, along with Quebec and Montreal, looks forward to hosting the reception this evening at the ICAO headquarters in Montreal to commemorate this year's 70th anniversary of the creation of ICAO. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sherbrooke.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, do you know what is of concern to me and the people of Sherbrooke? Environmental protection. You know what's on the bottom of the priority list for the Conservatives? Environmental protection. Not only because they have put an incompetent minister in charge, but also because they simply deny climate change. At a time where leaders across the globe are laying the foundation for an international agreement, Canada is a minor player, even playing the role of a saboteur. Fortunately for my generation and following generations, in October 15th we will finally have an NDP government that will take up its responsibilities in terms of climate change and that will ensure we have a quality environment and a sustainable economic development policy. Moreover, one of the first steps we will take will be to attend the Paris conference, to move from the sidelines to becoming a major player. We must take action now.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow, December the 6th, is the anniversary of the Halifax explosion. 97 years ago, the SS Mont Blanc, a French munitions ship, and the SS Emo, a Belgian relief ship, collided in Halifax Harbour. Minutes later, the Mont Blanc ignited and quickly exploded. That explosion was the largest prior to the atomic bomb. The blast was heard and felt over 200 kilometers away. 1,600 people were killed immediately, and another 9,000 were seriously injured. Hundreds more perished in the resulting fires. Worse yet, that evening a winter nor'easter dropped freezing temperatures and heavy snow on the survivors. Much of Halifax was a destroyed city, and relief trains were sent from the rest of the country, but the first to reach Halifax carrying doctors, nurses, and supplies was from Boston, Massachusetts. In 1919, the province of Nova Scotia sent a giant Christmas tree to Boston as a thank you, and in 1971, that tradition was continued. And every year since, a 15-meter-tall Nova Scotia Christmas tree is lit in the Boston Common as a reminder of our gratitude for their assistance long ago.
The honourable member for Saskatoon-Wanuskewin.
100% of families with children in Saskatoon-Wanuskewin, and for that matter across Canada, will be better off thanks to our Conservative government's new family tax cut. We expanded and increased the universal child care benefits so that every family in Canada, like the Penners and the Weebs and the Claussens in my riding, will now receive nearly $2,000 per child. That's nearly $12,000 over a child's first 6 years of life, but the NDP have never met a tax that they didn't like, and the Liberals have never seen a tax that they wouldn't hike. The Liberals and the NDP would reverse our Conservative tax cuts and force every Canadian to pay more. Only this Conservative government can be trusted to put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Canadians and to support families, which are the basic building block of society, the bedrock of our society.
The honourable member for Burnaby Douglas.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Conservatives gutted the process by which we approved new oil pipelines, eliminating the voice of ordinary people and tilting the process to favour companies. It is so bad that many Canadians who might have their homes expropriated can't even send a letter to the National Energy Board to express their objections. Disturbingly, the Liberals completely back these Conservative process changes. The Liberal leader says, quote, "I am very much a proponent of Keystone XL," and, quote, "I am certainly very interested in the Kinder Morgan pipeline. I certainly hope that we're going to be able to get that pipeline approved." Mr. Speaker, the last few weeks have seen the arrest of over 100 ordinary people who oppose Kinder Morgan's plan to build a new pipeline through our community. These are not radicals, but regular people who have been silenced by the Conservatives' changes to the approval process, changes which the Liberals support. I went to Burnaby Mountain 10 times over the course of the recent turmoil and have spoken in this House many times to the stress these changes have caused. Mr. Speaker, it is clear the NDP is the only choice for Burnaby voters in the next election, as we're the only party to stand with them.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, mums and dads should be able to make the important decisions that affect their own children. That's why our new family tax cut will give 100% of families with kids an average of more than $1,100 per year to spend on their own priorities. The majority of benefits flow to low and middle income families. Our government trusts parents to invest in their children, but both opposition parties are against putting money back into the pockets of hard-working families. In fact, the Liberals have said they will reverse our tax cuts.
No, not again.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will not hike taxes like the Liberals and the NDP propose. Rather, we are proud to ensure that mum and dad have the final say in where their money is going.
Excellent. The honourable deputy de Beauharnois-Salaberry.
The honourable member for Beauharnois-Salaberry. On the eve of the holiday season, most of us are planning to buy gifts for our loved ones. To the people of Beauharnois-Salaberry, I encourage you to accept the challenge of buying locally this year. To do so, many municipalities have set up craft shows like Salaberry de Valleyfield, Saint-Martin, Beauharnois, and Saint-Clotilde, or Christmas markets in Hemmingford, Huntington, Saint-Louis-de-Gonzague, where you can buy locally made products, homegrown regional products from people who have worked hard. By buying local, you'll kill two birds with one stone. You'll discover unique gifts and stimulate the local economy. So if you have the means, why not make a donation of locally grown products to one of the food banks in our region? Buy something for the Sapin du Petit Bonheur, an organization that provides gifts to the most needy. Or contribute it to a Christmas basket in one of the stores or in my office. I encourage you to do this so that the most needy can spend Christmas on a full stomach and with a twinkle in their eyes.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is Canada's National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women that commemorates the 14 young women who were brutally murdered at École Polytechnique in 1989. Women and girls continue to face violence and harassment in their homes, in their schools, in their workplaces, online, and on the streets. And women's equality advocates identify prostitution and human trafficking as two of the most serious forms of violence against women. It is fitting, therefore, that tomorrow Bill C-36 will come into force. This is a historic moment for Canada. Under Bill C-36, Canada's laws will uphold the equality of women as human beings, not objects to be bought and sold. It will seek to end the violence against women inherent in prostitution and in human trafficking. Tomorrow and every day of the year, Mr. Speaker, let us remember the victims and let us be resolved to continue to stand against violence against women in all its forms.
The
Honourable Member for Jonquière-Alma. Mr. Speaker, for 25 years now, Quebec has had an injury that won't heal. Never-ending grief, ongoing malaise, 14 students shot because they were women. We must clearly denounce all types of violence against women and never let our guard down. We must work relentlessly to achieve gender equality. It's also our duty to think and take action to ensure that we can all live safely without violence. This House must do its utmost, everything in its power, to prevent events like that from recurring. Out of respect for the victims and our children, let's take action together so that we never see an incident again like the one at Polytechnique.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke North.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow and always we remember 14 young promising women who did not have the opportunity to grow older, pursue their dreams, and have the gift of time with their families just because they were women. We hope that their families know that their daughters are not forgotten, that they instill courage, that they inspire, and that they remind us all to fight tirelessly to end violence against women, which sadly remains a daily reality for 3,000 women in Canada and sends 1,000 women and children to shelters each day. 25 ans après,
25 years later, no one can imagine the pain felt by the families of these young women, and we are deeply saddened. We hope that the presence of loved ones and a caring nation standing behind you will provide you some type of comfort.
Your smart, courageous, motivated young daughters with us. We promise never to forget them.
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
Barbara Kluznik-Widajewicz, Geneviève Bergeron, Hélène Colgan, Nathalie Croteau, Barbara Degnaud, Anne-Marie Edouard, Maude Haviernik, Maryse Lagagnère, Maryse Leclerc, Anne-Marie Lemay, Sonia Pelletier, Michel Richard, Annie Saint-Arnaud, Annie Turcotte. 14 women killed for the simple reason that they were women. 14 women that we will never forget. Demain, nous commémorons.
Tomorrow, we will commemorate the 25th anniversary of the assassination of these women at the Polytechnique. Even if we have made progress since this massacre, violence against women is of concern. Women like Zahra Mahmoud Ardil of Toronto.
They're seeking shelter from abuse. Like the 1,200 Indigenous women and girls gone missing or been murdered. À la mémoire de toutes ces femmes.
In the memory of all of these women, let's renew our commitment today to put an end once and for all to violence against women.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, 25 years ago, on December 6, 1989, a horrific crime took place. 14 young women at l'École Polytechnique de Montreal were brutally murdered. On that awful day, their lives were senselessly ended, along with the hopes and dreams they had for the future. In shared sorrow, families across our country hugged their daughters a little tighter that night. The tragic events of that day brought a new focus in our society on violence against women, yet well over 2 decades have passed since then, and many challenges still remain. Sadly, Status of Women Canada must continue to focus on initiatives to address gender-based violence across the country. This includes engaging men and boys to understand that gender-based violence is not acceptable or normal behavior. While we cannot and probably never will be able to make sense of the crimes that day, we must continue working to ensure that they never happen again. Mr. Speaker, on this anniversary, let us resolve to respect one another and value each other as equals.
I now invite the House to rise and observe a minute of silence in memory of the victims of the tragic event that happened 25 years ago at École Polytechnique in Montreal. Your colleagues. Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary General of the United Nations has denounced the Conservatives' laissez-faire attitude when it comes to climate change. Instead, he's calling for an ambitious, visionary policy. He points out that Canada should show leadership as a developed country and start the transition to a green economy today. Why are the Conservatives disappointing the United Nations and the international community? Why do they not have a plan to fight climate change? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, our government will work towards a fair agreement in Paris that will involve all polluters and all economies. It is important that this agreement be sustainable, flexible, and efficient. In the meantime, Canada will continue to take concrete measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while maintaining a strong economy. Canada emits less than 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Canada's emissions per person are at the lowest level.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that their so-called policy is an utter failure and it's costing billions of dollars to the Canadian economy. That's the reality, Mr. Speaker. What's more, instead of attacking climate change, they're going after honest citizens with the bill, the shameful bill from the member for Vancouver South. Ban Ki-moon is right to criticize this government's inaction. Because of 20 years of liberal and conservative inaction, we are among the worst OECD countries on this. So the question is clear. Will the Conservatives finally agree to participate in a global, legally binding agreement to fight global warming? Yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
As I've said before, we are working towards working with all our international partners so that we have an effective agreement. We are very proud of our record. We are a founding member of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We have made significant investments to help support green energy and infrastructure internationally. We have one of the cleanest systems in the world. We have already regulated the transportation system and electricity sectors, and we are planning to reduce HFCs, one of the fastest growing greenhouse gases in the world. Thanks to these actions, Mr. Speaker, carbon emissions will go down close to 130 megatons from what they would have been under the Liberals, and we've done it without a job-killing carbon.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, climate change is killing jobs in Canada. It's costing the Canadian economy billions of dollars already. That's the reality. Now, the Secretary General of the UN is begging Canada to act on climate change, and that should mean Conservatives put their extreme ideology aside. But instead of acting, Conservatives prefer shameful bills like that of the MP for Vancouver South that risk criminalizing people who speak out on the environment. Leadership is needed. They promised oil and gas regulations for almost a decade. When will they finally act? And when will this decade of darkness for the environment finally be over?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to oil and gas regulations, the member knows that this is a continental issue that needs a North American solution. Our government will continue to work with the Obama administration on reducing greenhouse gas emissions for the oil and gas sector, and we feel that it is best to align with the Obama administration as we've done already in the transportation sector. We'll continue to protect the environment and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in a way that maintains job creation and also economic growth, and we'll do it without that job-killing carbon tax.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Mr. Speaker, 14 women were killed 25 years ago at L'École Polytechnique on December the 6th. These women were killed because they were women. I know all of our thoughts are with the families of these women, but we must also commit ourselves to action. 25 years later, violence is still targeted at women because of gender. Will the government commit to working together with the NDP action plan to end violence against women?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
The massacre at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal was a tragedy, a Canadian tragedy. This week we remember the crimes that took place 25 years ago. Well, we cannot, and I would never think that we could make sense of why those crimes took place that day. We must continue to ensure that this never happens again here in Canada. Our government, we will continue to stay focused on supporting the victims of these crimes, as well as punishing those criminals that created these heinous crimes. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Mr. Speaker, the tragic murder of Zahara Abdil and her children shows how our system fails women fleeing violence. Women like Ms. Abdil need support like legal aid and housing. And in fact, the Canadian Bar Association report said victims of domestic violence are among the most vulnerable in society and require access to legal and other services to protect themselves and their children. So what measures is the government taking to improve access to legal aid and housing for women who are fleeing violence?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been committed to preventing violent crimes, violence against women and girls. And let me list some of the things that we've done. And I would encourage the members opposite to participate in supporting these initiatives. The Victims' Bill of Rights Act. The creation of a DNA-based missing persons index, passing new laws to protect victims who have been harassed by those who have committed crimes against them, eliminating pardons for serious crimes, and better protecting youth from adult sexual predators. This is a few of many initiatives this government has taken. I'm very proud of that record of supporting victims and putting criminals behind bars.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow it will be 25 years since a murderer massacred 14 women at Montreal's École Polytechnique simply because they were women. 25 years later, are Canadians better protected? There is no longer an obligation for those who sell firearms, including those that were the firearm that was used at École Polytechnique, to verify if the buyer has a license or to keep a record of the transaction. That's irresponsible. The Conservatives are gutting gun control in this country. When will they stop putting the safety of Canadians at risk?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've already mentioned, this week is a time to remember that crime that took place at the Polytechnic 25 years ago. In fact, a Canadian tragedy. And we will continue to support those victims as well as punish criminals. And as I've mentioned already in this House today, there are a number of initiatives that this government has already taken, whether that be the Victims' Bill of Rights Act or making sure that we have safe streets and communities. These are initiatives we've moved forward on and will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke North.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow we remember 14 young women who were murdered simply because they were women. 25 years later, this government wants to pass legislation that will make Canadians less safe. This bill would ease transport restrictions on automatic weapons so they can be moved more freely outside public places like a grocery store or a school campus. Given that tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of the Montreal Massacre, will the Minister of Public Safety reconsider these elements of his bill?
The Honourable Prime Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for that question. I would like to first state for the record that what was just said is absolutely false. In fact, this legislation will, for the first time in Canada, impose mandatory training safety courses. That is a first here in Canada. I'm very proud that it is this Conservative government that has brought forward that measure. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that we were making amendments to the criminal code to impose bans, prohibitions on anyone convicted of domestic violence, and that includes up to a lifetime ban, which is extremely important in this country, and I'm proud to be part of this Conservative government.
Honourable Member for Etobicoke North.
Yesterday, the Minister of Status of Women said she listens to women, but we have seen no evidence of this. Right. Women's organizations from across the country have called on the government to take action on violence against women. The YWCA, the Native Women's Association, the Canadian Teachers Federation, Plan Canada, and Canadian Council of Muslim Women have all raised their voices to call for a national action plan. 25 years after the Montreal Massacre, will this government come to the table and create a national action plan to end violence against women?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Well, Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as I mentioned in the House already today, the government takes extremely seriously violence against women and girls and condemns these acts. So whether it be my work with Plan Canada on International Day of the Girl, or recent announcements with the YWCA of Canada, whether it was just this last Friday, an announcement with the White Ribbon campaign I did with the Parliamentary Secretary for Public Safety, this government is focused on local community actions to make sure we're improving the areas where we know it is required. So whether that be supporting victims or making sure we put criminals behind bars, we're focused on actions as opposed to just the rhetoric and talk across the aisle.
The Honourable Member for Beauharnois-Salaberry. Mr. Speaker, on December 6, 1989, 25 years ago, 14 women were killed because they were women. Our sacred duty to these victims of misogyny is to better support women and their families who are victims of violence. But in 2014, 67% of Canadians know a woman, a mother, a daughter, or a friend who has been a victim of violence. This reality is unacceptable. Will the government work with us to eradicate violence against women in our society?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And, any allegations of violence, of harassment, whether it be in a workplace, at home, or otherwise, must be taken extremely seriously. Our government has taken significant actions, as I've outlined in this House today, to better protect Canadians, particularly women and girls. And I encourage anyone who has been the victim of any sexual harassment or violence to please step forward, report it to the authorities so that they can take action. On this side of the House, we're taking action through a number of initiatives, and I would encourage the opposition to join us in doing that.
The Honourable Member for Beauharnois-Salaberry. It's 2014, Mr. Speaker, and 25 years after École Polytechnique. It's clear that the measures that have been put in place by the Conservatives are not sufficient. The statistics speak for themselves. When it comes to sexual assault against women in Canada, in 97% of cases, the aggressor will never be convicted. 97%. And we wonder why victims don't want to come forward. Mr. Speaker, what is the government's plan to end this aberrant situation and support the victims? There are still too many of them 25 years after the massacre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government has taken significant actions in order to make sure that women and girls are safe. So that whether that be our movement forward on cyberbullying and cyber harassment, whether it be the Victim Bill of Rights, or the focus that we've had on punishing criminals, making sure that those that have created serious crimes no longer have the ability to have a pardon, or better protecting youth and young women. These are things that we're focused on, taking actions to make sure those victims of crime are supported and the individuals that commit these crimes feel the full extent of the law.
Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint Charles. Mr. Speaker, the ability to work allows women to increase their independence and reduce their vulnerability. To do this, they must have access to affordable childcare. Will the Conservatives finally face up to reality and offer Canadian women the possibility to return to the labour market without threatening their families' finances? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we've introduced the family tax cut. This provides support to every single family of children across the country. We've increased the universal child care benefit for young people ages under age 6. It'll be increased by $60 a month, $720 a year. And for children aged 7 to 17 or 6 to 17, it's also going to be increased $720. We're getting the job done for families from one end of this country to the other. We ask the opposition, if you truly care about childcare, if you truly care about young families, please stand up and support this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was talking about work. Too many women must face precarious living conditions. 21% of single mothers in Canada are raising their children in critical poverty. Every day in Canada, over 3,000 women stay in emergency shelters to escape domestic violence. And every night, roughly 200 won't be able to get in because there aren't enough beds. How can the government leave these women at the door? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we're making advances in low-income housing. We're supporting families with tax reductions. We are investing in child education. We're investing in apprenticeships to support young people and young families, young women, to get the education they need to take available jobs in this country. We're getting the job done. But every one of these initiatives, Mr. Speaker, that we put forward, the opposition time after time vote against. When are they going to stand up finally for young people in this country and support them getting the jobs and training and success they deserve?
The honourable member from Manitoulin Kapuskasing.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the advances they're making in low-income housing is actually laughable. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, violence rates against women and girls are higher in northern Canada. In spite of this, 70% of northern and rural communities don't have access to emergency shelters for women. 70%, Mr. Speaker. That's inconceivable. What is the government doing to increase access to emergency resources in rural and northern communities?
Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned before in this House, violence against women and girls is something the government takes extremely seriously. And so whether that be support for shelters on reserve or off, whether that be support for programming to make sure victims of crime are supported, we're focused on making sure we're taking action today to make sure these victims of crime are supported.
The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin Kapuskasing.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is that there are still far too few shelters and resources for women in the North. Despite the fact that they face a much higher likelihood of violence, women in the North are 10 times more likely to be sexually assaulted. Inuit women and girls are 14 times more likely to experience violence. All the government has offered is failed initiatives. Why won't the government announce a real action plan with real measures to address violence in the North?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times today, there are a number of initiatives that this government has taken to make sure that women are protected and supported. Whether that be matrimonial property rights on reserve, or whether that be the Victims' Bill of Rights. We're very focused on making sure the victims of these crimes, as well as women experiencing domestic violence, are supported and are able to transition into new opportunities, as opposed to the opposition, whose focus actually has been to vote against some of these actions that I think will truly benefit these women in need.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Cowichan.
Well, Mr. Speaker, prevention is one of the keys to end violence against women. But a 2013 study from the Canadian Network of Women's Shelters and Transition Houses found that many prevention initiatives are short-term and short-lived. And the Special Committee report on violence against Indigenous women found that First Nations, Inuit and Métis people lack access to prevention programs. What actions are the Conservatives taking to improve prevention programs and increase access to them?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a number of initiatives we've already taken that the opposition have not supported. So whether that be matrimonial property rights, actually the opportunity for a woman to stay in her own home with her children because she has the right to be there, as well as being protected in that circumstance, or whether it be the family violence program that is supported to make sure that they receive the supports they need when they're in shelter, that has just been augmented by our new initiative tabled here in the House of Commons on September the 15th to support Aboriginal women. We're moving forward to make sure they're well supported, unlike the opposition.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Cowichan.
But, Mr. Speaker, rates of violence against women are going up, not down. That's the evidence needed that the government's policies are simply not working, especially for Indigenous women who experience rates of violence that are 3 times higher than that for non-Aboriginal women. Most shockingly, Indigenous women and girls are 7 times more likely to be killed than non-Indigenous women, and that is completely unacceptable. Why won't this government call a national inquiry and propose a real action plan to end the violence?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess my question would be is why won't the opposition support the action plan we've put in place that takes action today for Aboriginal women as opposed to waiting for several years? Our focus is making sure the women that are experiencing these violent crimes receive support, help, and protection today. I would encourage the opposition to join us in doing exactly that. These women deserve all support of everyone here in this House of Commons.
Honourable member for Abitibi, Bay James Nunavik EU. Mr. Speaker, the minister doesn't seem to understand that their so-called action plan simply isn't working. Aboriginal women and girls continue to go missing and to fall victim to violence. Roughly 1,200 of them are missing or murdered. The Aboriginal community is calling for a national inquiry, and they're asking why we haven't started to seriously finally look at this question. Will the government finally listen to reason and start a national public inquiry, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I guess I would beg to differ with the member of the opposition. Whether it be the Métis Women's Association of Canada, whether it be individual Aboriginal Canadian women who have come to speak to me personally, or whether it be the friendship centres across the country, they have endorsed our action plan and asked others to join us in making sure that we're protecting and supporting Aboriginal women. I would encourage the opposition, please pick up a copy of the plan. Take a read. It was tabled in the House here on September the 15th, and I can tell you that Aboriginal women and their families have continued to support this because we're moving forward to support these Canadians.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the issue is real. In the past few months alone, Winnipeg has experienced a young lady pulled out of the Red River. We've experienced another young lady that was left for dead. There's been over 1,200 women and girls of Aboriginal and First Nations heritage murdered or gone missing. The government is not listening, Mr. Speaker. Whether it is our Aboriginal leadership, whether it is premiers, municipalities, everyone is recognizing the need for a public inquiry. My question is why is this Prime Minister, why is this Conservative government not recognizing the need for a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as has been mentioned in this House before, there's been over 40 studies completed. But, whether it be, I'll give you a quote. So this is a quote from Bernadette Smith, one of those individuals who has a sister who is missing. This action plan, the one tabled September the 25th, is something our families have been waiting for. We'd like to thank the government for their commitment to address this issue. We've had numerous studies and issues, and now is the time for action. We can't stand idly by and talk about this without taking action. This action plan will have a direct impact on families and help keep our girls and women alive and safe.
The honourable member for Charlottetown.
Mr. Speaker, stories of Conservative neglect of our veterans get worse by the day. Today, we learned that Conservatives rewarded Veterans Affairs officials with nearly $500,000 in bonuses for cutting services. At the same time, they fired almost 1,000 frontline workers who deliver services that our veterans so desperately need and clawed back money that was supposed to support those who've served. How can the minister stand in the House and defend the perverse practice of rewarding people for denying services to our vets?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we make no apologies for reducing bureaucratic expenses at Veterans Affairs Canada. The opposition wants to increase government bureaucracy. We're increasing frontline support for Canada's veterans. We recently announced 8 new frontline mental health clinics for Canadian veterans, Mr. Speaker. While the NDP defends the unions, along with the Liberals, we are defending Canada's veterans, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Canso.
Mr. Speaker, the government members should be appalled, not applauding, especially in light of the scathing Auditor General's report that showed some veterans waited months, if not years, for access to mental health services. The lapsing of well over $1 billion promised for veteran services, and now the rewarding of officials for denying services to our brave veterans. Are they still prepared to clap for a minister whose, sole legacy is the shafting of Canadian veterans? When will this Prime Minister take action and punt this minister?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we're making investment to help support Canada's veterans when it comes to mental health issues and challenges, Mr. Speaker. Our recent announcement, Mr. Speaker, helps Canada's veterans, and here are some of the initiatives that it introduces: Road to Mental Health Program, Mr. Speaker, Mental Health First Aid Program, along with new Operational Stress Injury Clinic in Halifax, with satellite offices across the country, Mr. Speaker, including St. John's, Chicoutimi, Pembroke, Brockville, Kelowna, Victoria, Montreal, and the Greater Toronto Area. We're also expanding the Military Family Resource Program for medically releasing Canadian veterans and their families. We will continue to stand up for Canada's veterans on this side of the House.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac. While the Information Commissioner is stretching her budget to the limit to make ends meet, Conservative members are opening the door wide to an increase in fees. Some even talked about fees of $200 per request for each request made by a journalist. That won't increase access to information, Mr. Speaker, and this Conservative government has the gall to boast about their open data policy. Instead of trying to gouge citizens even more, why don't the Conservatives respect the deadlines and give the resources to that the Information Commissioner needs?
Mr. Speaker, every agent of Parliament is responsible for managing the funds that are allocated to them by Parliament. Mr. Speaker, that's part of their role and responsibility. If any particular agent of Parliament has a problem with that, he or she can make a submission to Treasury Board, and we'd be happy to consider it. But if the honourable member wants to litigate this publicly, that's fine. But there is a process by which these budgets are considered and ultimately passed or not passed by Parliament.
The honourable member for Victoria.
The Conservative MPs on the House Access to Information Committee, Mr. Speaker, think the best solution to fix our ever-shrinking right to know in Canada would be to charge journalists and other Canadians hundreds of dollars just to file a request for information that should be public. That's on the record, Mr. Speaker. Why should Canadians be stuck with giant fees to ask for information that by law belongs to them? Does the President of the Treasury Board agree with his Conservative colleagues that jacking up fees is a good way to fix our broken access to information law?
The honourable member raised the more general issue. Let me cite some statistics. In fact, the responses to access to information have gone up by around 40%. There were 6 million pages released last year alone, which is an increase of 2 million pages, Mr. Speaker. I would say to the honourable members that the access to information law is there for the public, it's there for members, it's there for the media, of course. And if the agent of Parliament, the Information Commissioner, has a problem with her budget, she knows where to go.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada committed to taking in 1,300 Syrian refugees by the end of 2014. But only 457 Syrian refugees have landed in Canada. The minister failed to deliver on his commitment and repeatedly misled Canadians and this House. These are not just numbers, Mr. Speaker. They're actual human beings in the worst war zone in the world left behind by this minister. How can he justify such a pathetic track record on behalf of those who are so vulnerable?
The honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. More than 1,100 refugees from Syria have been approved to come to Canada. In fact, more than 1,150 have been approved to come to Canada and will be here in short order. They will join the more than 1,900 Syrian refugees that are here, that have been granted protection in Canada since the start of the Syrian civil war. Mr. Speaker, we can and we will do more, and I think the member opposite knows that.
Honourable member for Laurier-Saint-Marie. Well, that's not all, Mr. Speaker. The UN asked developed countries to accept 100,000 additional Syrian refugees. And what is Canada's commitment to this request? Zero. The High Commissioner for Refugees is organizing a ministerial meeting in Geneva on Tuesday concerning the resettlement of Syrian refugees. What will the minister bring to the meeting besides his indifference to the humanitarian crisis affecting Syrian refugees? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we welcome 1 in 10 of the world's resettled refugees. In fact, we work very closely with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres. We continue to work very closely with him. We look forward to meeting him next week in Geneva. We will be there at the table, Mr. Speaker. I think the member opposite needs to stop playing politics, partisan politics at this time. using the plight of people that really need help as an excuse to stand up in the House with misinformation like that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Canadian Armed Forces provided yet another technical briefing on Operation Impact and Canada's ongoing mission against ISIL. Mr. Speaker, this is just further proof of the government's commitment to keep Canadians informed regarding the activities of our brave men and women in uniform serving in Iraq. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence to please provide a further update to this House on Operation Impact.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member from Etobicoke Centre for this question and for his service as a proud veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. Early this morning, 2 CF-18s in a pre-planned mission conducted airstrikes against 2 ISIL fighting positions as well as 2 ISIL machine gun positions in the area north of Mosul, Iraq. These positions represented a clear threat to Kurdish Peshmerga forces on the ground. Our men and women in uniform have conducted themselves with the utmost professionalism in this ongoing fight against ISIL. I want to again thank them for their great efforts. Canada will continue to do its part in the international efforts to confront ISIL.
Honourable member for Notre-Dame-de-Gaston. Yesterday we learned that over the past years, Conservatives paid over $500,000 in bonuses to senior management at Veterans Affairs Canada, and yet 1,000 employees lost their jobs. Those are service cuts. There were, and $1 billion were returned to the Treasury Fund. Why are the Conservatives rewarding senior management who laid off people and trying to save money on the backs of our veterans? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we make no apologies for reducing bureaucratic expenses at Veterans Affairs Canada. The opposition wants to increase government bureaucracy. We're increasing the frontline support for Canada's veterans, Mr. Speaker. We recently announced 8 new frontline mental health clinics for Canada's veterans, while the NDP Defence Union, we're defending Canadian veterans, and we will continue to stand up for Canada's veterans this side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives say they need to cut jobs at Veterans Affairs Canada, even while we hear from the Auditor General the system is failing, and yet Conservatives fired almost a quarter of all Veterans Affairs staff. Now, the Parliamentary Secretary just a moment ago said it's important to reduce bureaucratic expenses. Now they want us to believe that their top 60 bureaucrats actually needed $500,000 in bonuses. I guess this is not a bureaucratic expense. It's nonsense, Mr. Speaker. Why didn't they use that money to actually help veterans?
That's right.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I just mentioned, our government is standing up for Canada's veterans, and we make absolutely no apologies for reducing the bureaucratic expenses at Veterans Affairs Canada. Mr. Speaker, the opposition wants to increase government bureaucracy, and we're increasing frontline support to help Canada's veterans. Mr. Speaker, we recently made an announcement where we are adding 8 additional operational stress injury clinics across the country, Mr. Speaker, the main one being in Halifax and the other ones in cities across this country. We will continue to stand up for Canada's veterans when it comes to providing them the benefits and the services they deserve, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Wheat Board is now owned by Canadians. It's a public company, and its financial statements actually should be made public. So is it losing money? Is it making money? Well, we don't know that because no one on that side will actually tell anyone. Jeez. So in addition to keeping the documents secret, the minister won't even confirm or deny that he's going to give the public asset away to a private company. So a really simple question to the minister. Will the government make the Wheat Board's financial documents public before it literally gives it away?
Oh, what a good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The motivation behind this question is that the member and his party are ideologically opposed to offering Western Canadian grain farmers the marketing freedom that they deserve. We promised Western Canadian grain farmers marketing freedom, and we delivered on that promise. And with great success, Mr. Speaker, renewed optimism in grain farming and farmers are prospering. But, Mr. Speaker, the CWB will assess all serious bidders and then submit a plan for commercialization to the government in accordance with the legislation passed in December 2011. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Welling.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on this side, we're actually ideologically in favour of transparency. So what we want to see from this government is some transparency for a change. So
if they're going to give the assets away, yes or no?
Yes.
Why is he giving Cushing patronage jobs? We'd like to know why exactly their Conservative friends are actually getting these jobs in the first place, when there really are people out there who could do the job who are not just simply patronage plum additions to this. So there's actually no end in sight to the grain backlog, and my friend across the way actually knows that. So when the minister give the rhetoric a rest, just for once give it a rest, and tell Canadians and farmers how much money the wheat board actually does owe, how much it makes, and will he give it away, or is he going to sell it and make money for Canadian farmers?
Mr. Speaker, the NDP want they want the public to know what's going on, except when it comes to their NDP offices, which were run illegally. But, Mr. Speaker, back to the CWB. Their first alarmist concerns regarding the CWB is that ending the CWB monopoly would somehow cause the destruction of wheat farming in Canada. Obviously not true. And their second alarmist concern was that a voluntary wheat board would not be viable. Obviously not true as well. Mr. Speaker, as I just mentioned, the CWB will assess all serious bidders and then submit a plan for commercialization to the government as stated in legislation passed in December 2011.
Member for Ottawa-Vanier.
Mr. Speaker, we must all fight against violence against women and girls here in Canada and elsewhere in the world. Close to 7 months have elapsed since Nigeria asked Canada to help it find and save over 200 young women who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, a group which is recognized as being a terrorist group. Can the government tell us where we are at in our efforts to help these young women who are victims of an extremist and violent group before it is too late?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as we're extremely concerned about the threat posed by Boko Haram to the Nigerian nation and to the nations around there, Mr. Speaker, I attended the security conference this summer to help Nigeria fight this terrorist organization. We will continue giving them the capacity building to fight this terrorist organization that has created havoc and have kidnapped those 200 girls. And we are hoping that this terrorist organization, Mr. Speaker, will be brought to heel and brought to justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for King's Hand.
Speaker, the Conservatives have hurt Canada's international standing. Now we see the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, is actually scolding us. He says that Canada needs to stop stalling on climate change and that we need to start thinking about others. Even if the Conservatives don't believe in climate change science, don't they know that their failure to act on climate change is hurting our economy and risking Canadian jobs? Don't they understand that their hostility to the environment is the reason why important projects like Keystone XL haven't been approved?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, that's ridiculous. Our government wants to reach a fair agreement in Paris that includes all emitters and all economies. And it's important that this agreement be durable, flexible, and effective. Meanwhile, Canada will continue to take concrete actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while keeping the economy strong. It's important that Canadians know that Canada emits less than 2% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, and Canada's per capita emissions are now at their lowest level since we started recording it in 1990, Mr. Speaker. And let's compare that to the Liberal record, where under their record, greenhouse gases went up 30%. That is unacceptable, and we're committed to getting results.
Member for York South Weston.
Mr. Speaker, more than 100,000 carloads of oil were shipped by rail last year, but citizens don't know when, where, or how risky it is, because the Conservatives refuse to stand up for transparency when it comes to the shipment of dangerous goods. Now we learn that the risk assessments ordered by the Minister of hazardous shipments through Toronto will be kept away from local residents and even from municipal officials. Why does the Minister think the railways company's interests come before Toronto residents' right to know?
Speaker, it's precisely because of this government's actions that municipalities like Toronto will know what's going through their communities. There are emergency responders, Mr. Speaker. That's as a result of discussions between the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Along with this government, it produced a very important information sharing directive so that emergency planners, in fact, can do the type of preparedness that they need to do, the type of emergency exercises they need to do. Mr. Speaker, That didn't exist before. Our government brought that in, Mr. Speaker, and we are taking care of that important information sharing with municipalities.
Honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Well, still no answers for the residents of my city. Mr. Speaker, the Transportation Safety Board said rail companies should be required to look at alternate routes to avoid population centres when shipping hazardous goods. But because of the secretive process imposed by the minister, we can't know if they actually have. Now the mayors of Toronto and Mississauga have called for greater transparency and for action to cut hazardous shipments. Will the minister work with the mayors to reduce the amount of hazardous goods coming through our city?
Mr. Speaker, the minister, in fact, continues to work with the municipalities on an ongoing basis. I met with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities president not that long ago, who praised the relationship and the working relationship with this minister with Transport Canada, Mr. Speaker, a relationship that has produced an historic information sharing protocol and agreement with municipalities and first responders, a relationship, Mr. Speaker, that has produced a number of important actions on this government, a new task force as well for ongoing work to increase our emergency preparedness response across the country, Mr. Speaker. So we're going to continue to take action. We wish they'd support that.
Honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Speaker, on a lighter note, as we approach the holiday season, Canadians across this great land will be celebrating Christmas and a variety of other holidays. This is a special time of year to spend with family and friends, to remember the memories of the past year and look forward to what 2015 will bring. For many Canadians, this involves many trips to stores for Christmas lights and ornaments to create a festive atmosphere. Can the President of the Treasury Board please update this House on what the government is doing to spread the holiday cheer?
The Honourable President of the
I'd be happy to, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes I feel that in this place, Festivus is the only holiday, the traditional airing of grievances. But in fact, of course, we know that Canadians love to decorate around the holiday season. This week, I sent out a message to all public servants, letting them know that they should feel free to festoon their workplaces around this holiday season, whether it's Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or Christmas. Indeed, I encourage all public servants and indeed all Canadians to enjoy the holiday season.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, 5 years after the horrific earthquake in Haiti, the Conservatives have ended the moratorium on deportations to Haiti and Zimbabwe, whereas today on the government's website, it advises Canadians not to travel there. This announcement targets over 3,500 people who have become part of their community. Their children are in school. Will they be deported from Canada? Has the minister taken into account their pathway to integration? And what will he do to ensure that our humanitarian duty is carried out? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the temporary suspension of deportation is for people who are dealing with crises back in their country of origin. It must be determined that the conditions in Haiti and Zimbabwe have considerably improved, and therefore their temporary stay of suspension has been ended. However, there is a special process to allow people who are facing deportation to apply for permanent residency on humanitarian grounds. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government's inaction to fight pollution in the Port of Quebec City is shameful. Despite important pollution spikes that were revealed and alarming reports dating back to the 1980s, the government has done nothing to increase monitoring or to limit the harmful effects on the population of Quebec City. Why is the Minister of Transport voluntarily turning a blind eye to the dismal record of the Port of Quebec? Parliamentary Secretary.
Member may advocate a takeover of ports authorities by the government, but they are in fact independent organizations responsible for running their day-to-day operations, Mr. Speaker. The Minister, notwithstanding that, has been clear that ports authorities in their conduct of their activities should be working with local tenants to reduce the red dust pollution, Mr. Speaker, I understand that the Quebec Port Authority has been working with tenants to, in fact, reduce those dust emissions, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite should be supporting the Port Authority's efforts to do that with their tenants.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, as a Canadian and a British Columbian, I'm proud of our government's leadership in matters relating to the Pacific Rim, both in terms of the economy, last week's announcement of the Korean Free Trade Agreement, and the humanitarian side. Last year, in the wake of Typhoon Haiyan, our government took a real leadership role. We pledged willingness to help, and we sent DART and Red Cross field hospitals to the Philippines. Building on that generosity, Mr. Speaker, our government set up a matching fund to which donors contributed $85 million to support the victims of that typhoon. Mr. Speaker, constituents of mine are troubled to hear that another typhoon is moving in the direction of the Philippines. I'm wondering if the Minister can update the House on this situation.
The Honourable Minister of International Development.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for this question. Of course, we stand behind our friends in the Philippines, and we stand ready to help if needed. Mr. Speaker, we have reached out to several humanitarian partners already on the ground to gather information on current preparedness measures being implemented and to assess potential response options. We have in place important emergency response tools such as the Emergency Disaster Assistance Fund to support immediate response activities of the Red Cross movement. And as it was noted by the Auditor General in his report, this fund allows our partners to respond rapidly when required. So, Mr. Speaker, we are ready and we will assist if needed at the very crucial from the beginning. Thank you.
Honourable member for Jonquière-Allemand. Mr. Speaker, this week, mayors on the North Shore sounded the alarm given the crisis in the forest industry in Quebec. Once again today, more plant closures were announced. Instead of sitting idly by and dismissing measures to develop new products and markets, why doesn't the government act to support this important sector of the Quebec economy? Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, that is absolutely false. On the contrary, I think that my colleague should stop trying to be divisive here. We have put in measures to develop new markets and new technologies to see how we can encourage this industry in Quebec in the 21st century. We have shown that when we work together, we can make great achievements in Quebec, New Brunswick, la Francophonie. We have ensured that the Honourable Michael Jean was elected head of the Organisation de la Francophonie, and we can be proud of that. The Honourable Member for Jonquière-Allemand. Mr. Speaker, Greenpeace is calling for a review of FSC certification standards, and yet Quebec's forestry practices are among the best in the world. In fact, the Quebec government has been making representations to industry clients in Europe and the United States to show how good our practices are. Will the government join Quebec in its efforts to support the forest industry in Quebec? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, our government sympathizes with those who are affected by the closures that this member has mentioned. Our government has taken strong action to support the forest sector through unprecedented investments. Unlike that member who repeatedly opposes our government's investments, we will continue to support rural jobs in this important sector of our economy. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton St. Albert.
Mr. Speaker, taxpayers want to know why the acting commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission has been allowed to rack up nearly $760,000 in travel expenses over the last 8 years. David Longtree has been acting chief commissioner since September 2010, and as acting chief has not been required to relocate to Ottawa. Now, the Justice Minister has said that he will appoint a permanent chief commissioner soon. As this untenable arrangement has been ongoing for over 4 years, how does the government justify not appointing a permanent commissioner to start protecting taxpayers from exorbitant expense claims?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Any misuse of taxpayer dollars is simply unacceptable. The Human Rights Commission is an independent, arm's-length agency responsible for managing its own resources. Our expectation is that expense decisions are made with a mind to respecting taxpayer dollars. We are working to fill this position on a permanent basis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes question period for today. Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader. Tabling of documents? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 14 petitions.
Introduction of government bills. Déclaration de ministre.
Statements by ministers.
Session interparlementaire.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
From committees. Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Motion. Presenting petitions. Présentation des pétitions. The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
I have the honour to present a petition by many British Columbians asking for our government to increase the penalties for impaired driving, specifically those that cause death. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting petitions. L'Honourable Député de Brassard.
The Honourable Member for Brassard-la-Prairie. I have petitions signed by hundreds of people in my riding.